Hey there, thank you for joining us. Week 4. We are now less than a month out. It's March 26th through the 28th from a Nexus church planner engagement that I'm headed to in Dallas, Texas. Pastor Patrick Lightfoot connected me with the church planning organization called Nexus, and that's going to be a great opportunity to come alongside and come under people that plant healthy, thriving churches for a living. And so that's wonderful support and infrastructure and accountability and so many things surrounding this Harvest Church development. And so any and all prayers would be so much appreciated for that. Myself, Daniel Alvarez, we've been working through a lot of prep work, hours of prep work leading up to the Art of the Start, and we would really appreciate your prayers here at the end of the month. That's going to be a great surrounding of this church plant development. Secondly, the interest meeting. We now have a date, Sunday, March 22nd. It's at Ridgeline Middle School, 10 a.m. We are hoping that it feels like new beginnings, new as in unique, not like a revisit or a reunion of old friends, as in something that God personally wants to do in us and through us in a new way. We're going to have a program for the kids. We're going to have an opportunity to pray together and hear the vision of what this Harvest Church exploration is all about. What is God uniquely calling us? What is the kingdom-oriented focus that we all together can be a part of? It's our hope that in the weeks to follow, we have opportunities to pray together, to be in maybe small groups, to pray through what is it that God's uniquely calling of me? What is it that God's doing in me? What ministries need to develop in us and through us? Because we know that if 1, 2, 10 people are the ones doing the heavy lifting, this is only going to go so far. But if God has called a community of people to be asking, what are you calling of me to do sacrificially and generously and engaged, as we discern that together in a community of people, that's what we're looking forward to in the weeks following the interest meeting. And so, of course, what happens after that will develop as we go. We'll develop as God leads us. We'll develop as the community speaks and says, this is what God is calling of us in the launching of what's called, hopefully, Harvest Church. And so maybe you're asking, okay, the interest meeting's coming up, and then there will be opportunities to gather and pray together and maybe in small groups distill all this. But what are opportunities for me to engage now? What can I do now? And I want to suggest just a few things. First, you can serve people at that interest meeting. If you are interested in serving, whatever that looks like, I know we're going to need help setting up, cleaning up, facilitating people. And so if you're interested in helping us serve people at the interest meeting, I need you to reply in an email or a text to either myself or Daniel Alvarez. If you're looking for something outside, engaged in what is the community of Harvest Church going to be doing in the community, without apology, bridge the gap. Standing in the gap for foster, adopt, kinship efforts in the ways that is truly a decentralized effort. It's leaving any logos or any certain organizations at the door and saying, what can we collectively do together to meet the unique needs and the opportunities in our community? That's what we as Harvest Church are all about. So Bridge the Gap is absolutely an expression of that, meeting needs, unique needs in our community. And so I'd love to connect you with Bridge the Gap opportunities. Maybe you don't know where to start. Maybe you're a little bit paralyzed and you're not sure, where do I start with my unique calling? And I would invite you to connect with me one-on-one. I'd love to sit down with you and start that process of what does your unique development look like? What does your flourishing in your calling look like? And then lastly, something we all can be doing, pray and encourage one another. Man, if we can be a community of people that are committed fiercely to praying and encouraging one another as this has its grassroots starts, then man, that is something we will always look back on. That is something that we know will glorify God and serve and encourage one another. So be praying for and encouraging one another. Let's be a community that experiences incredible unity in that. Okay, Daniel, chapter 2. We're going to finish chapter 2 off. I'm going to just read through the rest of the chapter, starting in verse 31. It's Daniel interpreting the king's dream, an interpretation that Daniel received from the Lord. He said, You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. This image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. As you looked, a stone was cut out by no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them into pieces. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold all together were broken into pieces and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. So for starters right there, why does God use dreams? Does God still use dreams to communicate to people? This dream is apocalyptic in nature, which means it's especially important to connect this dream and the happenings of chapter 2 with the whole book of Daniel. This is how we avoid a part 1, part 2 kind of understanding. Apocalyptic, cosmic perspective is all over the book of Daniel. Today, dreams or visions are credited for tremendous fruit in bringing people to faith in many different nations in evangelism, as was the case back in Babylon. Many people are coming to faith because of the medium, because of the means of dreams, that God is uniquely meeting people in dramatic, maybe even sometimes disturbing ways. Now, while of course not every dream that we have is going to be divine communication, and sometimes we wish that God would communicate to us just that clearly, that boldly, I do wonder if sometimes we should pay a little more attention to what God might impressing on us in dreams. Here, God Almighty is in the pursuit of this king's heart and mind and soul. So let's see where this pursuit leads. This was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. Verse 37. You, O king, the king of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, and the might, and the glory, and into whose hand he has given wherever they dwell the children of men, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, making you rule over them all. You are the head of gold. Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you, and yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these. And as you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom. But some of the firmness of iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with the soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. And in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. It shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end, and it shall stand forever. Just as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, a great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation sure. And then finishing off the chapter here. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and paid homage to Daniel and commanded that an offering of incense be offered up to him. The king answered and said to Daniel, truly, your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and the revealer of mysteries, for you have been able to reveal this mystery. Then the king gave Daniel high honors and many gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. Daniel made a request of the king, and he appointed Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel remained in the king's court. Man, there is so much to unpack here. So much to dive deeply on. I hope you are diving deeper beyond just these videos. You could dive deeper in the ways in which God used Daniel to save a great many people. The king, out of his fury from no one being able to tell him the dream or the interpretation, was going to kill all the wise men, including Daniel and his friends. But through Daniel, God not only saved Daniel and his faithful friends, but he saved others. He saved the wise men that otherwise the king would have killed. So how God has used Daniel to overflow the blessing and save others, that's a main point to maybe follow. Another main point to follow is what Daniel does with the leadership when he gets it. Daniel is made prominent and powerful after he reveals the vision and the interpretation to the king. And what does he do? It's biblical leadership 101. He decentralizes it. He involves other people. This is the key to Christian leadership, to biblical leadership. That if a person understands the leadership is not mine, I don't possess it or own it, then that leader will understand, then my job is to take that and involve others. That's what Daniel does. He gets Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego as soon as he has power and authority. He doesn't let it go to his head. He decentralizes it. He involves others. That's another rabbit trail to go off on. And of course, there's another opportunity within this vision to know that that fourth kingdom that was stronger than the others, but then partly strong and partly brittle, that's the Roman Empire, the unprecedented Roman Empire. But because it had mixed many different peoples and cultures, it couldn't stay together indefinitely. But a stone carved by God, a stone not carved by human hands. What Jesus says later about himself, that the stone that the builders has rejected has become the cornerstone. This is a kingdom that will never end, that outlasts all other kingdoms, that embraces the diversity to make the kingdom stronger. That is what God does through Jesus. Through Jesus, this is a foreshadowing of the great kingdom of King Jesus, that it stands where no other kingdom can stand. So I want to kind of land on this last point because it's going to allow us to have a thought-provoking question that I hope sticks with you this week. Through his actions, the prominence and the opportunity that God gave Daniel, Daniel and his friends now have the opportunity to have influence over Babylon. They have an opportunity to disperse peace and welfare, and in doing so, saves many lives. And again, as we saw in chapter 1, and as we mentioned when we were talking about chapter 1, about Jeremiah chapter 29, I want you, the people of God, to seek the welfare of where you are in exile. God is using his people's lives to reach and save many others. The reason I want to land on that point is I want you to be asking, who is it that God is after? Right here in the book of Daniel, hopefully you are reading and rereading the first 2 chapters. What is it that God is after? Who is it that God is after? I want you to take some time this week just with that one question, because I want this to be a spillover. I want this to be a spinoff. As we're reading Daniel, we can see that the God of the universe isn't just after preserving and keeping and holding and keeping his people. Even today in the church, we can become so myopic and safe and inward focused. It's about me and what me and my family and those around me. It's what we need. God's best realization for my life is taking care of us. And while I'm saying that is true, it's also shocking as we go through Daniel to be asking the question, is that what God is after? Just taking care of his people, making sure his people are okay? Or does it then overflow? Does it overflow in shocking ways that God's after the king? God's using his people to save the lives of even the wise men of Babylon. Who and what is it that God is after? If God's after people that we wouldn't expect, and God uses means that maybe would surprise us as clearly he does throughout the book of Daniel, what does that mean for us? This is a key and central question, I believe, in pastoring the people of Harvest Church, in pastoring the beginning formations of this community. Let's be asking, let's turn this Daniel biblical apocalyptic lens now onto our world and say, if God uses his people to meet people in shocking ways, to meet those we wouldn't expect, and to bless those we wouldn't expect, what does that mean for us here and now? God, what are you calling of me to do in surprising, shocking ways? Stick with that question. Let's see where it takes us.